let you guys see how you can maximize your sweet potato harvest. What I do is, okay, here's your sweet potato vine, and it's just running across the surface of the soil. And so what I do is I make a trench along the line of how the sweet potato vine is running, and then I lay the vine down in that trench. I hope you can see the depth of that. I get it down in the trench and I water it. I try to get the trench quite damp. And then I get the soil over the vine all the way down, covering it up, letting the leaves stick through. So every contact where the leaf comes out, a root will form. And so I find that gives you more rooting places, which gives you more sweet potatoes. And I leave the tip out so it can continue to grow. Now, this one here is quite long. And so I have one row here and one row here. And I'm going to just go in between those and get this one done as well. Sweet potatoes are fairly easy to grow in my climate. I'm in Zone 9, Southeast Texas. Now I do run the risk of overcrowding them, but I would rather take the chance of maximizing the amount of sweet potatoes I get instead of having more vines that's just running along the ground, instead of actually giving them the opportunity to root. And so I just, every couple of weeks, I go through all of my sweet potato beds and I do this. And I have found that my harvest is bigger when I do this than when I don't. Malabar spinach is like any other plant. If you want it to stay producing and looking lush and making leaf upon leaf upon leaf, you have to pick it regularly. Now for me, that's not difficult because I use it as feed for my chickens. But basically what you do is you take a leaf and you just pinch it off. And I usually look for the biggest ones because they are full of, they're similar to okra in the fact that they're full of like a mucus-like substance, which is extremely good for good gut health. But I am not super crazy about the flavor of it. The bigger the leaf, the more mucilage you get in your mouth when you're eating them, especially if you eat them raw. So I go through and I pick the largest leaves for my birds because They love them and don't seem to really mind the sliminess of them. I grow this plant honestly because it's so beautiful. Look at those berries. The berries can be used as dye. They can be eaten. This whole plant is edible. You could probably even use them as coloring in baked goods. I haven't tried that yet. As I said, I mainly grow it to feed the chickens. And then I take the little leaves like that and no bigger than that. And I mix those into salads for me and Mama because we're still getting the beneficial health of the plant and not really tasting the part we don't like. So again, if you want your plant to stay healthy and producing a lot of leaves, because let me zoom back a little bit, because it is a beautiful plant. So if you grow it for nothing else but the look of it, you still have to pick the leaves regularly so it will continue to produce leaves. The berries start out looking like this, which is beautiful to me too. The green with the little pink specks. When they become deep purple like that, you see how easy they fall off? That's your seed. So I usually take quite a bit of these every year and just sit them in a bowl on my dining room table and let them dry. They shrivel up looking like raisins, little bitty raisins. And once they're dry, I put them into a container and save them for planting next year. During the growing season, I take a few off like that. And you see how on this side of the fence, it's kind of thin. It's not as thick as that. And I'll just take it and drop them down in the ground, removing any grass or weeds that has collected. And then I just cover them over. And as I water, see if you can see that little one here, that's a plant starting to sprout that just sprouted. And every couple of days I do that because when you're messing with the vine, the ripe ones just fall off anyway. So that's a way of keeping my fence full. And it's growing pretty well. Okay, so I decided to show you guys how I make my fish emulsion. I use scraps from fish and shrimp. In here I have some old shrimp tails and heads. I just dump that on into the bucket. And here's a few more. And if you don't have this, you can use canned salmon or tuna or any kind of fish byproduct that you can get your hands on for fairly cheap. I wait until I cook shrimp and fish. Here's a few catfish bones. And you see I freeze them until I have enough collected to make a 5-gallon bucket's worth. And then in this jar I have a cup of blackstrap molasses. And I know that some people use some people use sawdust because they say it cuts the odor. The truth is, it just stinks, and so I don't worry about the smell. And then you just want to fill your bucket up. And I let mine sit at about 6 months, because if you let it, it's ready before then, but if you want the heads and everything to totally disintegrate, you need to really give the sugar and the molasses time to break everything down. And I come and I stir it every now and then, but for the most part I just let it sit, because it will break down on its own. And after I get this bucket filled, I'm going to show you what I have that's ready to use. And I decide that it's ready to use when the smell is not so offensive anymore. It's still going to have somewhat of a odor, but it's not so strong that it makes you sick to smell it. Okay, so I have a top, and I don't know if you can see that, but I drilled a few holes in it so it can breathe. And then to keep the mosquitoes and other little bugs from getting in it, I just take a piece of mosquito netting and I cover it. And I leave a little bubble room. I didn't, if you notice, I didn't fill it all the way up to the top. I leave a little bubble room because as it ferments, it will bubble up, and I don't want it to bubble over, because as I said, it does have quite a punch. The odor is quite stinky, and I get that top on there really good, and then I put a brick on top. And like I have said in previous videos, we do have possums and raccoons that come through the yard from time to time, but so far I haven't had any problem with them getting into this mixture. And so right here I have a bucket that is complete. It's been sitting for 6 months, and it's ready to be used. If I give it a little stir, you can see there's still a little debris in it. See right there, I think you can see a piece of crab shell. But for the most part, there's no offensive odor. There's very little bacteria showing, you know, like slime or anything on the surface. And so this bucket is complete. And then what I do is I mix it with water when I use it. But for now, I just wanted to show it to you, so I'm gonna get the cap back on it and put my brick back on it so that nothing to mess with it. But this one does not have any odor, and like I said, it only takes about 6 months for that to happen, based on how much you put in the bucket and how hot it is outside.